Yeah, because it's aged so well. Because I mean, we'll see.
No, so what, you know what happened? It came
It is
out.
on.
It came out right after the snowstorm.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Check. Check 1 2 3 4. Check 1 2 3 4 5
Could you go up to 7?
6 7. Here, you both said.
Is there? Is there a mic?
That's what I meant. Check.
Well, and you were kind of a racist, so whatever. But like,
I lived there on accident, right next to the old Colony House. I thought all Boston was the same. It's like just a little grimy with the red screen. And then realized it was that really was the way. The white, black rose. Oh, really? Oh, no, I haven't. Is it a documentary or a feature? It's a feature. Johnny Depp plays Whitey Bulger. It's pretty much like the real Departed.
Have you seen the Hong Kong movie that Departed is based on?
You know right? The Hong Kong movie?
Yeah, it's a Hong Kong crime movie called Infernal Affairs. It's also great.
Check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Check.
Summer of 2003, the fall of 2003.
Mic check. 1 2. Mic check. 1 2. Mic check. Mic check. 1 2 3 4. Mic check. Mic check. 1 2. Mic check.
Mic check 1 2. Check 1 2 3 4.
Sorry about that. Pardon me.
Check 1 2.
Time does the party start? I did an RSVP for it though, so that was gonna come get us.
Check.
Are these
Mic check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9.
Good evening, everybody. My name is DJ Betancourt, former Majority Leader of the New Hampshire House, and it is my pleasure to welcome you tonight to Salem to hear from the next President of the United States. Governor, I have to admit, I was a little concerned that you were going to get through this thing without getting a full taste of New England winter.
Yeah.
But it worked out that you got a little snow, and I noted it didn't stop you one bit. You're out there to win this thing, and with your support on this critical weekend coming up, folks, there are a lot of people out there who haven't made their mind up about this race. And they're going to be going to the polls on Tuesday, and they're going to be asking themselves some key questions. Who's going to turn this economy around? Who's going to keep me and my family safe? And with your hard work, we're going to help Governor Christie seal the deal, and he's going to come riding out of New Hampshire with a victory, and he's going to win this thing. And anybody tells you that this thing is over doesn't know what they're talking about. It isn't over until New Hampshire has had its say, and it's going for Governor Christie. I want to welcome up Paul Chevalier, who's going to do our Pledge of Allegiance. He's a great veterans leader.
Thank you, DJ. Folks, if you'd all rise, and you may not be able to see it, but the flag is over here in the corner. I assure you it's there. We'll begin this meeting like we should begin all public meetings in the United States by pledging allegiance. So please join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm now will turn the mic over to the former Speaker of the New Hampshire House, Donna Sitek.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you all for coming out on the 38th anniversary of the blizzard of '78. This is just a little reminder in case you forgot what snow looked like. It's my pleasure to introduce Governor Christie tonight. This is my 10th New Hampshire primary that I've been very involved in, and it's only the second time I've been asked to introduce the candidate. The last candidate I introduced was a governor. We had the reception. It was a town hall at the Barron School. We had maybe, in the most generous estimate, 75 people. That governor was Ronald Reagan. So, so things turned out pretty well for him. So I'm hoping that I can bring you good luck, Governor. I became, like all New Hampshire voters, looked at all the candidates, and back last May, I saw that one candidate was taking a bold position on an issue that I cared about most at the time. It was our national debt, $18 trillion and counting. And Governor Christie at the time came in with a specific plan, a bold plan, and I gave him credit for that. So I had to pay attention to him. I looked at all the other candidates and I decided we need to have somebody with executive experience, so that narrowed the field down to the governors. And I went to town halls for all of them, like many of you that I've talked to earlier tonight. You're doing the tour of town halls in New Hampshire, which is your duty as a New Hampshire voter. And I've decided that the candidate that has the executive experience, that has the temperament, that is willing to listen to your questions and answer your questions, the best candidate for us to vote for and our next president will be Chris Christie, Governor.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm really happy to be introduced by the speaker. What she neglected in her summary of her consideration was that I did not leave her alone. She came to town hall meetings, and I saw her, and I would always chat with her. And then we were at a couple of house parties together, and I would talk again. And when I was talking at those house parties, I was spending an inordinate amount of time of looking at the speaker and trying to gauge her reaction to things. You were feeling the love. You absolutely. I'm glad to hear that. Because I knew how important it was to me to win over her support. She's a history-making person in the state. She's the first ever female speaker of the New Hampshire House, and somebody who is extraordinarily well respected in the state. And as you come here as a first-time candidate for president, and you get to know the folks in this state, people are very honest with you about which folks are really important to earn their respect. And Donna Sitek was one of those people that I was told very early on by Wayne McDonald, my campaign chairman. He said, you know, if you can get Donna Sitek on our side, that would be a great get. And Wayne continued to encourage me to make efforts. And so I'd be calling her, text messaging her when I wasn't there all the time, and just continuing to let her know that her support was really important to me. And so it was one of the really happy days. I know Mary Pat remembers this, when we found out that Donna was going to be on our team. We really felt like we had accomplished something that was very meaningful. And so to have her introduce me, and I never knew the story that the only other candidate she introduced was Reagan, so I love you even more now, Donna. So thank you, Donna, for your friendship and your support very much. Also, I just want to mention one other person who's here tonight. I am incredibly gratified that one of the members of Congress who represents New Jersey in the House of Representatives has traveled up here to help and work for us as in these remaining days of the campaign. I was proud to campaign for him as he ran for Congress. He was wonderful enough to invite me to be his guest, his only guest, when the Pope addressed the House of Representatives. And it was an amazing day to be in the House of Representatives and to be in the presence of the Holy Father. And now he is up here helping me. Not the Holy Father. Very close, though. Congressman Tom MacArthur from New Jersey. Tom, stand up, would you please? Tom might have to step out. He's working on getting the Holy Father here, but he's going to step out on that. I want to thank you all for being here, despite the snow. This is a great crowd, and I know not only do we have a lot of New Hampshire folks here, but it is the beginning of the New Jersey invasion of New Hampshire for the weekend. I see a number of my New Jersey friends here who have decided they're coming up to help to make sure that we get out as many voters for me as we can on Tuesday night to lead us to a really, really strong showing here in New Hampshire and leading us right into South Carolina next, a week from Saturday. So I'm very grateful for my New Jersey friends who are here as well. So just one quick thing off the top before we start your questions. You know, as you get down to the end of an election, you know, it's the choosing time. And we've got a bunch of undecided voters here. I am confident of that. It's always the way it is in New Hampshire town hall meetings. We have a number of undecided voters here tonight. And what I want to tell you all is you are some of the best shoppers in America. You know, New Hampshire voters, they wait, you know, it must be just awful here like on Christmas Eve in New Hampshire. Because you people take as much time to pick your Christmas gifts as you do your presidential candidates. Man, it is a huge rush on Christmas Eve into the stores that people are finally picking those Christmas gifts. But this is really an important choice to make. And I just want to make one point to you. We have a lot of people in our party and across our country who are discontent with Barack Obama's leadership. Let's put aside the philosophy, which a lot of us just wholly disagree with, of more government, more taxes, more spending, more involvement in their lives, in your lives from a regulatory perspective and what that does. No doubt we all, as Republicans, and even some independents and like-minded Democrats, don't agree with that philosophy. But let's put that aside for a minute. I think one of the things that most offends us is his just blatant incompetence in being able to run the government. whether you're a veteran who's had to deal with the absolute insult of what he's done to the Veterans Administration and their inability to care for the health and the welfare of our veterans, or whether you're a member of the military who feels as if the commander-in-chief has abandoned them and they've been no more demoralized at any time in recent memory, or whether you're someone who actually believed that Obamacare could work and you've watched the debacle of the computer system not even be able to work, crashing on a regular basis. We all seem to forget that Obamacare not only stinks on the merits, but when he rolled it out, he couldn't even get the computer system to work. We see over and over again failure just to manage the government, failure to even know that your Secretary of State has her own private email address that you're emailing to her all the time and not noticing that it doesn't end with .gov in it. I mean, a lot of incompetence going on in this administration. And so you say to yourself, all right, we want to get rid of this. We want to get rid of this incompetence. We can't take it anymore. The government spends too much money, it wastes too much money, and it doesn't give us what it needs to give us. In fact, for the last 7 years, we've had a number of foreign terrorist attacks on this soil, which we didn't have for the 7 years after 9/11 under George W. Bush. He knew how to keep America safe. This president does not. So if we're going to make a change, and certainly that's what we're all in this for, is to make a change not only of him leaving, but of bringing in a new look and a new approach into government, why would we do the exact same thing that we did 7 years ago? 7 years ago, we elected, whether you voted for him or not, he's our president, this country elected a first-term United States senator who had never managed anything bigger than a 30-person Senate staff, who had no major accomplishments on his Senate resume because most of the time that he was in the United States Senate, he was running for President of the United States. And we put him in charge of the most complex government the world has ever known. And we stand here today disgruntled and angry about the fact that he hasn't run it well. Well, what did we expect? How do we expect that someone who has never run anything bigger than a 30-person Senate staff would actually be able to run this government? And now here we are as a party. If you agree with the polls, now let's remember something, that the polls in Iowa, the Saturday night before, 48 hours before the voting started, said that Donald Trump was going to beat Ted Cruz by 5 points and that Marco Rubio was only going to get a 14% showing in Iowa. Well, Ted Cruz beat Donald Trump by 4, so there were 9 points wrong there. And Marco Rubio got 23%, so there were 9 points wrong there. So I don't know exactly what the polls that are out there right now mean, but let's assume they're right. It means the top 3 contenders right now to win the New Hampshire primary, none of them have the kind of executive experience that you need to actually run the government. We've got Ted Cruz, who has been in the United States Senate for 3 years. 3 years, and a year of those 3 years, a third of his term, at least, with me being nice about this, he's been running for president. I've always gotten the sense that Ted's been running for the presidency from the time he got to Washington. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Just the last year, for sure, he's been running for the presidency. And you have Marco Rubio, who's been in the United States Senate for 5 years. And for at least one of those years, he's been running for the presidency. And then you have my old friend Donald Trump, who has been running a real estate firm which, you know, has been successful, but doesn't have a Congress he has to deal with, doesn't have a bureaucracy he has to deal with. He's been doing that and never once has had any position in government where he had to negotiate with anyone, deal with anyone, work with the political system at all. Those are the 3 people that, if you believe the polls, are the 3 people that New Hampshire residents are considering most strongly for this primary victory. I have to tell you, feels like we're going down the same road, if we do that, that we went down 7 years ago. And why would we do that? I mean, we put out a television ad 2 days ago with Marco Rubio's newest supporter, Senator Rick Santorum. All he was asked, I mean, this is not, like, listen, I've been asked a lot of nasty questions on television, a lot of gotcha questions. I know a nasty gotcha question. Joe Scarborough asked him, can you name one accomplishment of Marco Rubio's in the United States Senate? And they gave him 3 minutes of continuing to ask him. And after 3 minutes, he could not come up with one accomplishment of Senator Rubio's. Your own supporter couldn't come up with one accomplishment. And here's why. He doesn't have any. He just doesn't have any. His campaign put out a response afterwards about 2 bills that he got passed, which, let me, by the way, tell you, were both passed by unanimous consent in the House and the Senate. Now, Congressman MacArthur is here, and he knows how difficult it is to get something passed by unanimous consent. I mean, Marco Rubio, when those bills were passed, by the way, wasn't even there. He wasn't there to vote for his own bill by unanimous consent. And it must have been awfully contentious topics, right? Because to get Republicans and Democrats all to agree on a unanimous consent voice vote, Republicans and Democrats, Nancy Pelosi agreeing with Steve King, Jeff Sessions agreeing with Chuck Schumer. I mean, either he's the new miracle worker or Joe won a very contentious issue. You know, it's like putting more sanctions on Hezbollah. That was one of them. I mean, I got to tell you the truth. I doubt there's a lot of people in America who go, less sanctions for Hezbollah. Sure, they're blowing up people all over the world. Let's get less sanctions for them. Doesn't mean it's not important, but it doesn't mean it was that much of an accomplishment. Listen, everybody, when you're making this choice, you got to decide. You got to decide whether the person's ready to sit in that chair, ready to make those decisions. And by the way, he is inheriting, whoever the next president is, a much more dangerous and much darker world than Barack Obama was inheriting in 2009. There are fewer democracies today than the day Barack Obama became president. There is more warfare today than the day Barack Obama became president. There's more violence based upon religion today than there was the day he became president. And so this next president really has to be ready to hit the ground running, ready to make hard decisions, and has been tested. And one last thing. This is now an appeal for those folks who are just Republicans in the room, because I know we have some independents and we usually have some Democrats too. But if as a party, we're looking to avoid losing 3 in a row, any party in this country can lose 2 in a row. It happens almost all the time. You win one, the president is likely to get reelected, no matter which party they're from. But losing 3 in a row is bad, really bad. We haven't lost 3 in a row in a long time. You think about it, we haven't lost 3 in a row since FDR. Now, Democrats have, but we haven't. And we're not only picking the next commander-in-chief of the United States military, we are also picking the person who is going to stand across the stage in September from Hillary Rodham Clinton. And if any of you watched, I didn't watch the debate last night, but I watched the town hall meeting they did a couple of days before that. She's ready. She's ready. Don't doubt it for a minute. I know everybody's talking about her getting indicted, and she very well may at some point or may not. She's got all kinds of problems, but let me tell you, absent being taken away in cuffs, all right? I know. Absent being taken away in cuffs, she's going to be ready. And so's her husband, and so's her daughter, and so's the whole Clinton machine, which is the most powerful Democratic machine that's been built and sustained itself since FDR. So who do we want to have? Who do we want to have sitting across that stage from her? Do we want to have somebody who's never been in a tough race? Somebody who's never been tested? I saw CNN do a piece today on Senator Rubio. They said that he gives the same speech every time he comes someplace and gives the same 6 answers. They played it over and over again from town hall meetings. Question, here's the same answer, the same answer, the same answer, the same answer. Listen, everybody, that's great. They call him, right now because they like him, they call him disciplined. Okay? Wait until this is over. If he's the nominee, they're not going to be calling him disciplined. They're going to call him something else, the media, and it won't be nearly as nice. We've got to be ready to win this thing. And we got to have somebody who's been through a fight or two before in their lives and won them. Because if you haven't been in the mud before, and the first time you're going to be in the mud is on the stage against Hillary Rodham Clinton, and that group that throws mud better than anyone I've ever seen in American politics, you're going to look like a young deer in the headlights. First time they hit you with something that you can't believe that may not even be true. I mean, there have been so many untrue things said about me over the years, it doesn't even bother me anymore. I don't even flinch, right? You got to be through that. You've had to experience it. And so we are going to make the argument over the next 4 days that experience does matter. And I know everybody's angry. People are angry with Congress. People are angry with the president. They're angry with Washington in general. They want to burn the place down. I get it. I understand. I understand why you want to burn the place down. So do I. But remember something. Let's say any of us, me, Donald, Marco, Ted, that we'll all go down and burn the place down. Who's ready to rebuild it after we burn it down? Because it's going to need to be rebuilt. Because we need national defense. We need Homeland Security. We want Social Security and Medicare to work. I mean, we're going to have a federal government whether you like it or not. And who's going to rebuild it once we burn it down to the ground? You better have somebody who knows. Second worst natural disaster in American history hit my state. We lost 365,000 homes in 24 hours. And I had to rebuild it. I know how to rebuild things. I know how to tear them down, and I know how to build them back. And that's the kind of experience we're going to want in this election. And one last thing. You know, Hillary Clinton has spent the last 6 months running away from federal prosecutors. Put one on the stage with her next September. She won't be able to run. She'll have to stand right there. So I want to take your questions now. Before I do, I have to do one more introduction, and it's by way of story. When we first came down, up here to New Hampshire rather, in June of last year, Mary Pat and I came together. We're coming to do our first set of town hall meetings, and we were staying at a hotel down in Manchester, and we came downstairs early in the morning to start our day, and I came down and we had our luggage with us, and Mary Pat went off to get a cup of coffee. And I was standing in the lobby waiting for her, and the manager of the hotel came up to me, and he said, Governor, it's really nice to meet you. I really appreciate you staying in our hotel, and we hope we're going to see you a lot more over the next number of months. I assured him that we would. And we shook hands, and he walked away. But then he immediately came right back, and he said, by the way, I want to tell you something. I think you can tell a lot more by a man by how he acts than what he says, and I'm impressed. I said, really, why is that? And he said, well, you know, you could have just walked to the car, sat in the car. He said, but instead, he said, you stood here and you waited for your young aide to go get her coffee so you could walk with her to the car. Now, this is a true story, I'm telling you. And I know how rumors get started in presidential campaigns. So I said to the guy, hey, hold on, man. The woman I came downstairs with in the elevators from my hotel room was not my young aide. She's my wife. And so she came back over. She likes the story. But she likes the story, of course, because she's referred to as the young aide. So I told her that whenever we did town hall meetings together in New Hampshire, from then forward, that I would tell the story, but in return, she had to do something for me that if she were in fact the young aide, she might do. So since it's time for me to get to work and answer your questions, it's time for me to take off my jacket. And I said, you know, if I really had a young aide following me who would do these things, they would actually take my jacket. So what do you think? And she said, okay, so here we go, all right? All right. Just one rule for the town hall meetings in New Hampshire, just one. You raise your hand, I call on you. Someone will bring you a microphone and you ask me a question, I'll answer it. I can guarantee this, I cannot promise you that you will like every answer I give you tonight, but I can promise you that you will not walk out of here confused. There's lots of things that are said about me over time, lots of things. One of them is never that I am misunderstood, right? So just one, and we'll get you a microphone, and we'll be happy to answer as many questions as we can tonight. I'm going to start with this gentleman right in front of me. Yes, sir.
Governor, the real reason why I'm here is when you're elected, I want to get a job in your cabinet, so that's the reason why I'm here.
We'll be collecting resumes at the door. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, I've been following you since you announced you've been running, and you were like the first person to talk about the heroin epidemic throughout the states, and particularly in our neck of the woods here, it's affected a lot of families. And I've heard you talk about it, but being a school official in my hometown, how can you help out the local cities and towns, and especially maybe the schools?
Sure. Listen, the federal government's not going to swoop into every local town and county to do this work. It's not appropriate for us to do it. And I'm, a federalist. I believe in state government. I believe in the idea that the states should be able to handle most of these problems, but that doesn't mean that the federal government can't help, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be providing the right direction and inspiration. And so you've heard me talk about this. I believe as president, I would appoint an attorney general who would establish drug courts in every federal court in America, here in New Hampshire, in New Jersey, and every other federal district in the country. We no longer need to be sending nonviolent, non-drug dealing offenders to prison. It's clogging up our prisons. It's clogging up our prisons, and worse yet, it is not giving them the help they need to get better. I would also talk to folks about how every community in this country should be supplied with Narcan, and their police officers and EMTs should be trained on how to administer it. We did that 18 months ago in New Jersey, and we've saved 7,500 lives in the last 18 months by administering Narcan. By signing a bill in New Jersey 3 years ago that said that for first-time, nonviolent, non-dealing offenders, you no longer go to prison, you go to mandatory treatment. Our prison population is now down 10%. Our crime rate is down 20% in the last 3 years. And the facts are that it's beginning to work. If you look at this year in New Jersey, this past year, 2015, for the first time in 4 years, overdose deaths statewide have gone down. Now, that does not mean by any stretch that we have it under control in New Jersey, because we don't. And it's still a huge problem as it is here and most other states in the country. But we're showing things that make progress. And this, we have to remember, and I would talk about this over and over again as president, this is a disease. It's a disease. And we don't penalize the people who get cancer, even if they contributed to the reason for their disease. We don't penalize people who have heart disease, even though their conduct may have contributed to them getting their disease. We don't penalize people who have diabetes, even though their conduct may have contributed to them getting the disease. Yet, with drug addiction, we feel differently. There's a stigma. The president has to lift that stigma. And that is not to say, let me be very clear, that I am okay with drug use. I am not. I'm the only candidate, I think, in this race who has very clearly stated that I would enforce the federal marijuana laws, and I would tell the people in Colorado and Washington State that either they enforce the law or I will. But it does mean that when that person is afflicted with that disease, that we owe it to them to help. Last thing I'll say to you is this. I'm pro-life. And I'm pro-life for a lot longer than the 9 months in the womb. And in many ways, the 9 months in the womb are the easy part. They haven't done anything to disappoint us yet. It's when they come out that life gets a lot more complicated, a lot more complicated. But I'm pro-life for the 16-year-old heroin-addicted girl on the floor of the county lockup. Her life's a precious gift from God, too. I'm pro-life for the lawyer in his mid-40s who got addicted to painkillers and can't get out of bed and can't go to work and is losing his family. I'm pro-life for the 90-year-old veteran who some people say should have assisted suicide as an option, and I say no. God decides when life ends. God decides when life ends. So I think for those of us in this room and as part of the Republican Party who are pro-life, we should get on this drug treatment issue because those lives are precious also. And we got to lower the stigma and raise the treatment. If we do that, we're going to do very, very well. So thank you for raising the issue. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there.
How are you?
It's nice to meet you.
Here, why don't I give you mine?
Okay. First of all, sorry, I'm Deb. I happen to be an elected Republican Central Committee member in Warren County, which is the southeastern section of Ohio. Drove up here. 2-day drive, thank you very much. And thank you, darling, thank you. My question to you is this. I get very angry and I very much resent the fact, since I have been paying into Social Security and Medicare since I was 15 years old, that the President of the United States and all of Congress refer to those two programs as entitlement programs. They are not entitlement programs, they are retirement programs. And do you agree with that, first of all? Okay, so if you agree that retirement and Social Security are not entitlement programs, I would like from you, please, to give me 3 other real entitlement programs, how you would cut the funding of that, and the money that you would save would then help pay down the national debt.
Not there. First off, yeah, you're right about Social Security at a minimum, that it didn't start off as an entitlement program. Let me tell you when it became one. It became one in the mid-1960s when the government started to steal the money from the Social Security Trust Fund. Okay, so what's happened now is that since the mid-1960s, Lyndon Johnson decided he didn't want to raise taxes to pay for the Vietnam War, so he just started stealing money from the Social Security Trust Fund. And it's been happening now by every president since then for their own purposes, and Congress for their own purposes, to steal that money. And so now you've got only about 2 people for every 1 retiree paying into the fund, and you have a fund who's had their money stolen from them up to and including just a few months ago when Congress passed that latest budget deal where they took $150 billion from the Social Security Trust Fund and put it in the Disability Fund. Now, you know, my view is they should reform the Disability Fund, and I've been saying that for a couple of years. The president should do that, but the president doesn't want to do that. So what's happening now? We've got an imbalanced checkbook in Social Security. Harvard and Dartmouth says it'll be insolvent in 7 years. And so what do we do about this problem? I'm the only candidate who's put forward a plan on what to do about the problem. And that's why when entitlement reform gets asked in any of the debates, I'm usually the guy who gets the question. Because they go, well, Governor Christie has a plan, and then they'll go to somebody else and say, you know, so what do you say about Governor Christie's plan? And could none of the rest of them have a plan, right? They asked Rubio 2 debates ago about his entitlement reform plan, and he gave a 90-second answer on tax reform. And then Cruz responded for 60 seconds on his tax reform plan. And then Rubio responded 30 seconds to Cruz's critique of his tax reform plan. And I finally interrupted and said, can I please interrupt this debate on the floor of the United States Senate to actually answer the question that was asked by Maria Bartiromo about entitlements? So I think you're right. I think with Social Security in particular, it did not start off that way. But unfortunately, given the conduct of the government, it has become that. So I put forward a plan that will save $1 trillion over the next 10 years, a little more than $1 trillion over the next 10 years on Social Security to make it solvent for the people who, like you said, paid into it for their whole life and are expecting it to be part of their retirement on the way out. There's 2 things I do on Social Security. The first is we have to raise the retirement age. And here's why we have to raise the retirement age. We have to raise the retirement age because we're all living longer. The average life expectancy now for a woman in America is 83. The average life expectancy for a man is 79. These programs were developed, especially Social Security, people died in their mid-60s. So people are living 15 to 20 years longer on average than they were expected to live. And so that's a huge drain on the program. So we need to increase that age. Now, I would increase the age 2 years, and I would phase it in over 25 years. So essentially it would go up 1 month a year, every year for 25 years. So for folks who are on Social Security now, it would not affect them at all. For folks who are close to Social Security, it'll affect them by a few months, probably at most. If you're, let's say, if you consider 62 now close to the 67-year-old retirement age in Social Security, then instead of 67, you could retire at 67 in 5 months. So an extra 5 months of work you'll have to put in, but it will make the program actuarially much more viable. Second, we need to means test Social Security. Because it no longer funds itself, we have to figure out a way to balance the books. There's only 2 ways to balance the books, as you know, whether it's your checkbook or whether it's Social Security. It's either pay less money out or take more money in. My plan says if you make $200,000 a year or more in retirement income, that means you got $4 to $5 million bucks saved, ballpark, to throw off $200,000 in retirement income. First, I say, God bless you. Good job. You know, you worked your whole life in this country, paid your bills, everything you need. You got $4 or $5 million bucks in the bank. Good work. Second thing I say is, God bless America, because you couldn't have done it anyplace else but this country to have that kind of opportunity. But do you really need the $1,200 a month Social Security check if you're making $200,000 a year in retirement? Now, I know your argument that is implied in that is, well, I paid in and I want my money back. I get that, except they stole it. They stole it. So what do? You got to do one of 2 things. You either have to pay less out, or you take Hillary Clinton's plan, which is take the cap off the Social Security tax and have everybody pay Social Security payroll tax on every nickel they make. Not up to the limit now, everything. Now, that's a perfectly acceptable plan if you're her. You know, her approach and philosophy to government. It's a perfectly acceptable plan. At least it's something where she's trying to balance out the books. But my plan, I believe, is better than hers for this reason. Let's use an example. Let's say new bank opens in Exeter, New Hampshire. And you deposit your money in that new bank, even though you're from Ohio. I don't know why you would do that, but let's just play along with me on this, okay? So you deposit your money in that bank, and then a year later, the bank goes belly up, and you lose some of your money. Then 6 months later, guy comes up to you, comes to your front door and says to you, hey, I'm opening up a new bank in Exeter, and I'd love to have some of your deposits. And you look at him and you say, hey, wait a second. Aren't you the guy who opened the bank 18 months ago that went belly up and I lost some of my money? He goes, yeah, but I learned my lesson. Now, I see the buttons you have on and the shirt you have on. Her shirt says, America United We Stand. One button says, Benghazi Matters, and the other button says, Common Core Stinks. All right? Now, a woman who has that shirt and those buttons on, I guarantee you one thing. That guy's not leaving her front porch with any of her money. All right? No chance, right? So if he won't leave your front porch with any more of your money, why would you give any more to the government? They did the same thing to you. They stole your money. And so that's why my plan is better. One of the 2 is going to happen. It's going to happen. You can't make the books balance. It's going to happen. And if you want to deal with $19 trillion in debt, and 71 cents of every dollar that the federal government spends today is on those programs and debt service. It's like they asked Willie Sutton, why does he rob banks? He said, because that's where the money is. We want to try to get debt under control. We need to go after that. Now, your other part of your question was on the other type of entitlement programs. And so from that, I'm assuming you mean things like food stamps or other types of welfare assistance. Right, Section 8 housing from HUD. Right, yeah, free cell phones. Yeah, I like that program a lot. Let me tell you what I do. I do the same thing. Once I become president, I will do the same thing I did in New Jersey. When I came in New Jersey, we had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget. Now, I want you to understand how we got there, okay? The state raised taxes and fees 115 times in the 8 years before I became governor. At the state level, 115 times. And spending increased in those 8 years 56%. You can imagine that it was Democrats in charge of the legislature and the governorship. 56% spending increase more promises to pension holders, public employees, and 115 tax and fee increases. And then we still have an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget with a constitutional requirement to balance the budget. So what did I do? They wanted me to raise taxes. I said, absolutely not. We've done that already. It hasn't worked, and I'm not taking more money from the people of this state. So I went, and we're not going to be payroll for the second pay period in March. The state of New Jersey, the second wealthiest state in the nation per capita, was not going to be payroll for the second pay period in March. I get this news on January 19th after I'm sworn in as governor. So I go into a room for 6 weeks, 3 days a week, with my state treasurer and members of my senior staff, and I say, I want you to take me through every line of the state budget. Every line. That's a $29 billion budget, so it's a lot of lines. And this is what I had them do. They would read me the program. They would read me the description of the program. They would tell me how much had been appropriated, and then they would look at me and say yes or no. And 800 times I said no. And we cut 800 programs from that budget. And let me just tell you that every one of those programs had a constituency, every one of them. Believe me, I heard about it. Like phone calls, emails, letters, protests on the front steps of the State House. But when you're governor in that kind of problem, you just need to put your head down and ignore the noise. I knew what I had to do, and I did it. And I did it by executive order, by the way. I declared an economic state of emergency and invoked my powers as governor to take that money out of the legislature's budget in the middle of the year so that we could balance our books. So that's the same thing we got to do with the federal government. And the last piece of it is to deal with debt. So all those programs obviously would be on the table for the yes or no treatment, the free cell phones in particular. And the last piece is we need to grow our economy more. 0.7% last quarter, 0.7%. We're never going to put a dent in our debt if we continue to grow at that rate. And we have some ideas about how to do that too. But thank you for coming from Ohio. And I love your buttons. They're really good. Other questions? Other questions, other questions. Yes, sir, over there.
Hi, Governor. Thank you for coming. So as a 23-year-old, climate change is a big deal for me. And I know I was born in New Jersey, and now I live in Massachusetts. And public transit is something that I take a lot. And I'm just wondering, especially with high-speed rail, looking at other countries like Japan, China, European countries, what is your opinion on public support for those types of services? I know New Jersey Transit is something I've ridden many times. And I know that the Japanese government wanted to build a maglev line from Washington, D.C. to New York, and they even offered to pay for the first 40 miles to Baltimore. I'm just wondering.
Those
what
are the easiest 40 miles, by the way.
I know. I've ridden the Acela trains down there. I went from Boston to D.C. and back in one day when I was 18 years old. So I know. But I guess I just want to know, what is your opinion on high-speed rail and public transit service in general and subsidies for that at the state and federal level?
Well, they don't operate unless you subsidize them because there's not enough ridership to sustain them, right? So they can't operate without subsidy. So we're already subsidizing them significantly in New Jersey, and the federal government's already significantly subsidizing them through Amtrak. Now, the only part of Amtrak that actually makes money is the Boston to Washington corridor. And it's barely, if they do. Depends on the year. But the one that really makes money is Boston to Washington. The rest of them we're subsidizing significantly. Now, I'm all for modernizing our rail systems, but everybody's got to pay their fair share. Everybody. Well, let me finish, dude. This is not a, we have ended the conversation part of our program. You've asked me a question. I'm giving an answer. You're videoing all of it. So let's have a clean video for you when we get done, okay? Good. Because there's not enough cameras here already. What I mean is that these are not just the federal responsibility, right? So you mentioned New Jersey Transit. New Jersey Transit is the third largest transit system in America. And New Jersey Transit gets subsidized significantly by the state of New Jersey. So if we're to improve those things, there's certain parts of the rail that Amtrak owns, there's certain part of the rail that New Jersey Transit owns. We got to be responsible. And by the way, so does Massachusetts, so does Connecticut, so does New York. Everybody has to get in on this game. So you may recall that I canceled a tunnel underneath the Hudson River. Why did I cancel it? And this is at a time when nobody was doing this stuff in the country, but I canceled it. And the reason I canceled it was an awful deal. It was they said it was going to cost about $9 billion to build. The federal government was paying $3 billion. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey was paying $3 billion, which means that $1.5 billion of that was New Jersey's money. And then the state of New Jersey was paying $3 billion. But then the kicker was, if there were cost overruns, the state of New Jersey paid all the cost overruns. Yeah, right? That's what I looked like. I'm like, huh? And then when I get into the job, they tell me, I go and meet with the federal DOT, and they say to me, listen, between us, you could probably anticipate $3 to $5 billion in cost overruns. Now, I just want you to understand, people around here understand this, who travel to Boston every day and live through the Big Dig. $3 to $5 billion looks like a hiccup compared to the cost overruns for the Big Dig. If you are doing underground work beneath a major American city, you can count on the fact that it will cost more. So I went to my friends in New York City and New York State. I said, listen, we're building this tunnel to your state. We're bringing New Jerseyans to your state for them to work and pay taxes and shop and make money and do all that stuff. So how about this? We'll go half with you on the cost overruns. And Mayor Bloomberg said, no. And Governor Patterson said, no. And I said, well, listen, if you don't go in half with me, I'm going to cancel the thing. And they said, oh, no. There's so much public support for this, you'd never do that. Now, to be fair to them, I had only been governor for about 4 months, so they didn't know me quite as well as they know me now. And I remember calling Mayor Bloomberg and saying to him, like, Mike, I'm serious. Like, we're broke over here. We got an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget, and now you're telling me I got $3 to $5 billion in cost overruns I'm going to have to eat, and where am I getting this money from? Like, I can't do this. You need to help. And he said, no, thank you. And he said, and you're not going to cancel it anyway. So a week later, I called a press conference. I walked out into my outer office, and I said, the project's canceled. Thank you very much. The federal government comes running up from Washington. You can't do this. You can't possibly do this. I go, no, I read the contract. I get to do this. and unless you're coming up here with a check, I got no interest in talking to you. And he's like, well, we can't give you any more money. We've given you all the money we can give you. I said, well, okay, then it's canceled. So my point to you is that now, guess what's happening in New Jersey and New York? There's a new proposal for a new tunnel. And guess the way it's being split up now. Half of it's being paid for by the federal government, and the other half is being paid for by New York and New Jersey. Wow. Stand your ground, make sense, and get something done. And that's the way you do things. So we'll see. I think that could lead to, if those changes are made the right way, because you cannot have high-speed rail unless you change the tunneling system in the biggest part of that system, which is in New York City. Whether you're going from Boston down or Washington back up, the most problematic, slowed down part of that is the infrastructure right around New York City. So there's a lot of other work that would need to be done to make high-speed rail go from Boston to DC. But if that doesn't get done, you're just wasting the money doing it otherwise. So that's got to get done first. And my hope is now that Governor Cuomo and I have an agreement to share the costs on the state side, and the federal government has not given us a fixed amount, but now say they will agree to supply 50% of it. Now, I'm waiting to see Congress actually appropriate the money, which will be another fun part of this whole thing. But we have a general agreement with the executive branch. We'll see what the Congress does too. But that's the way you have to do things, because we don't have unlimited money. We can't expect unlimited money from the federal government, and we cannot expect unlimited money from the states. But if everybody shares those responsibilities and then derives the benefit from it, then everybody wins. That's the way I would do it. Questions? Yes. In the back, he's kind of like pushing his hands forward. It's hard to see you, though, with the lighting the way it is.
Governor, thank you for coming to visit with us.
You're welcome.
The next president, whoever he or she may be, is hopefully it's the best president since Abraham Lincoln, and hopefully it's not the worst president since the incumbent. But whoever it is going to be able to make an impact on this country for the next maybe 30 years, and I'm talking about the Supreme Court.
Yes, sir.
There are 3, maybe 4 positions that may open up. I just wonder what qualities would you look for in the people you would nominate? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. You're right. And let me tell you, I'm very simple about this. I want judges who interpret the law and interpret the Constitution, not judges who write new laws and create new rights from the bench. That's not their job. But let me be even more specific with you so you have a real life example. If I am the President of the United States and I have my first opening for the United States Supreme Court, here's what I'll do. I will call my old friend, Justice Sam Alito. Now, Justice Alito is now in the United States Supreme Court. He had a job I had before I had it. He was the United States Attorney for New Jersey before I was the United States Attorney for New Jersey. Then George Bush 41, President George Bush 41, put him on the Circuit Court of Appeals. And then George Bush 41's son, George Bush 43, put him on the United States Supreme Court. If you read his opinions, what you will find is he is a quiet, consistent conservative. Not a lot of flash, not a lot of adjectives, but he's right. He's right all the time. And so what I would do, since we're friends, is I'd call Sam and I'd say to him, listen, can you come over to the White House? And I'd say to him, I want someone with a paper trail. See, I don't want to do what George Bush 41 did when he put, no offense to the people in New Hampshire, David Souter on the Supreme Court, okay, who he was assured by folks was a conservative and then turned out to vote wildly liberal on that court for his entire career there. I want someone with a paper trail who I can see what they've been saying during their professional career. So I'd say to Sam, you read all these circuit court opinions from around the country. They all come up to the Supreme Court. Give me the names of 5 people on the Circuit Court of Appeals with a real record who, when you read their opinions, you think these folks think like you do. And those are the 5 people I would interview, and I'd pick one of them. So that's the kind of Supreme Court justice I have. Hopefully, if I got as lucky as President Bush 43 got by putting Sam Alito on the court, we'll have a group of young, smart, quietly consistent conservatives on the Supreme Court for the next 30 years.
Thank you, Governor.
Sure.
Just to follow up on the Social Security question that was asked earlier, clearly in Social Security there's a lot of money involved, and you kind of mentioned your policy, which is a sensible one. But in the administration's budgets, every year I believe, they've come up with proposals to change the IRA laws in order to raise relatively small amounts of money. But they've used similar arguments about, people have a lot of money and they don't really need this. Do you make a distinction between Social Security money and people's individual IRA money?
A huge distinction. But because people's individual IRA money is their money that they still have in their own private possession. That's very different than money you've sent to the government, which they then stole. It's a two-step steal to steal your IRA money, right? And I think that's completely inappropriate and something that shouldn't be done. The problem with Social Security is we're trying to close the barn door after the horse already ran out, right? So we're now dealing with the ramifications of 50 years of theft, where before, now, the IRA situation, we got to stop doing those things because we're squeezing people from both sides.
So you would not change IRA regulations
I
as
would
they
not.
exist?
I would not. No, definitely not. And what we want to be doing is encouraging more of people to privately save, because the less dependent they can become on a Social Security system that we have not yet stabilized, the better off they will be. Forget us. The better off they will be, and then by extension, the better off we'll be too. So yeah, no, I would not change those rules. It is damaging to what we're trying to do, and we've made a little bit of progress in the last few years. The savings rate of Americans is going up for the first time in a while. And most of that savings is savings into retirement funds like IRAs or 401ks. So we don't want to do anything to discourage that. In fact, I'd want to encourage it so that they can be more stable for their senior years.
Can I ask you a foreign policy question? Just quick.
Yeah, we usually don't let two, but
Okay.
you know what?
I
that was a
apologize.
relatively short first one. So
I apologize.
So we'll give you a second one. Go ahead.
Thanks, Gov.
I'm in such a good mood tonight. I don't know.
You do a very good job on the debate platform in specifying, why as a governor you're different than other people's experience, and I get that and appreciate that. Yet you're going to be facing, hopefully you'll be facing Hillary Clinton, who could turn that argument around a little bit and say, Governor, you're very good at, dealing with, the transit, New Jersey transit stuff, but I'm the person who's done foreign policy. The obvious answer is you've got flawed judgment, but let's take that one away.
Sure.
And so then how do you address her apparent level of experience?
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, listen, for the sake of this question, and I understand why you want to do that, the flawed judgment thing is pretty big, right? So, but for the person, listen, I want to play. You're a smart guy, and you ask a good question, so I want to play the game the way you want to put the rules out there. The other thing you can say to her is, listen, it's not. It's not. It's much too nice to be a New Jersey question. The other piece of the argument you say to her is, listen, Mrs. Clinton, there's something more to making foreign policy judgments than experience. There is also how you actually go about making decisions and whether you're willing to make the difficult ones or not, and do you have a track record of making difficult ones or not. Put aside whether they were right or wrong on the flawed side. It's about making judgments. And she has not shown, nor has this administration shown, a willingness to actually make judgments, right? So Syria, they say we're drawing a red line in Syria, and if you use chemical weapons, we're going to attack you. And then the moment comes to make that decision, right? It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it. What I've shown over the course of my career is I am unafraid to make decisions. I'm unafraid to make decisions that need to be made. And what our allies are worried about around the world and the atmosphere that they have created through their indecisiveness is that allies don't know whether they can count on us anymore. So you have them then acting on their own in a way that you see the Saudis doing in Yemen. You see what's going on with the Jordanians and how they have to interact with Syria. And in fact, now the fourth largest city in Jordan is a refugee camp. I mean, that's not good for Jordan. And it's stunning for the people who have to live there. This is all because they've been, forget about flawed judgments, they've refused to make judgments. And that is something that's in here. If you are unwilling to make tough calls, then you don't belong behind the desk in the Oval Office. Now, I've also spent a ton of time learning these issues. I didn't know them 2-3 years ago, nearly like I know them today. I've been blessed that for the last 18 months, just about once every month, I get 2 hours with Henry Kissinger. It's like going back to school. He sends me reading beforehand. I read it. I go in and meet with him for 2 hours. He asks me questions. And then he tells me why I was wrong. And then I learn. But the best parts of my meetings with Henry Kissinger, to be honest with you, the hour and 45 minutes that we spend on foreign policy, and I get to pick the topic. The one thing I do get to do is pick the topic. Then he sends me stuff to read, then I go in and meet with him, and then we talk about the topic. But by the time we get through an hour and 45 minutes, I'm getting a little bit tired. He's getting a little bit tired because, heck, he's only 92. And then the last 15 minutes, he tells me stories about the presidents he's known. And he's known a lot of them. And he tells me those stories in the last 15 minutes to try to make sure that I'm ready. That not only about the individual policy that we've had. So I've done my homework on this. Now she'll say, well, I've been Secretary of State. Well, okay. But she opens herself up to the one thing that we put off, we put off limits in our conversation, which I'll have a lot of fun with on the debate stage, believe me. And you saw just a few weeks ago in her debate that she had here in New Hampshire, Martha Raddatz asked her 3 times about what share of the responsibility she would take for the mess in Libya since it was her policy. And she refused to answer. See, that's where I would get her. I'd say, listen, you know what, Mrs. Clinton, if Libya was a raging success, you would be like lighting yourself on fire to get people to pay attention to the fact that you had made those judgments. But as soon as something goes south, you don't want to be accountable for it. And that goes back to the governor versus legislator thing, right? When you're a governor, you have to be accountable. You can't say, well, I was only one of 30 votes, or I referred it to the subcommittee for amendment, and then something happened, and I had to vote the other way when it came back to the full committee, and your head's like spinning. You don't know what. Does that mean yes or no? Are you responsible or aren't you responsible? What are you talking about? Speak English. Stop speaking Washington. Speak English, right? But when you're a governor, let's use a completely hypothetical example about accountability. So let's say you're in the middle of running for President of the United States, and there's going to be like a 2.5-foot snowstorm in your state. Totally hypothetical. The governor goes back to his state, and he makes sure that everything gets done the right way. Because what he knows is, he can't say, well, listen, the plows were put on the front of the trucks, and the plows were put on the front of the trains to clear the tracks, and what do you want from me? I mean, if it gets done, it gets done. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I mean, I did what I was supposed to do. No one's buying that. If the roads aren't clear on Sunday and the trains aren't running on Monday, there's only one person to blame. And it's not the state senator from District 14, right? It's right here. And when you learn that level of accountability day after day after day, you're not afraid to make decisions anymore. In fact, what you become is completely enmeshed in making decisions, because what you know is anything you leave festering is gonna smell. It always does. If you don't deal with it, it just rots and it smells, and you got to deal with it eventually anyway, so just finish it. And Mrs. Clinton doesn't understand that because she's never done it. She's done it she took instructions from the White House on what she was doing in foreign policy. She executed and agreed with, and you have to assume she agreed with it, because if she didn't, she should have resigned. A bad policy. You know, these senators, you know, they always got somebody else to blame. You know, when you have to be accountable, you have to be accountable. So I think that that's the argument make with her on the stage, and she won't be able to help herself. Believe me, she'll get into like, I was right about this or I was right about that. Like, you've watched her, she will. And that's when it's counterpunching time. And that'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait for that. But thank you for your question. I appreciate it very much. Got a gentleman back there which looks like a Patriots hat from a distance. Shocking. Shocking that anyone around here would be wearing a Pats hat. Okay. Yes, sir.
Well, unfortunately, we're not playing this Sunday, so...
Yeah. Well, you played plenty of these Sundays, so, you know.
Not enough. Not enough.
It's never enough, is it?
No. No.
Like for anybody, it's never enough, right? I mean, you know, you always want to go to the Super Bowl every year. It's a lot more fun than staying home.
Exactly. Governor, House Resolution 154-114. This is not a gotcha question either, by the way.
Hold on, let me pull that up.
And this is not a gotcha question.
Go ahead. All right.
All right. It's the House Resolution calls on the president for Turkey to recognize the Armenian genocide. What will first of all, do you support that resolution? I'm sure you know of it.
I do.
And how will you tell Turkey, like it is, that no other American president has had the intestinal fortitude to do?
Well, first off, it's going to be my job to rebuild a whole group of alliances that this administration, both the secretaries of state, Clinton and Kerry, and the president has let go bad. And we got a whole lot of interests we got to balance here. So we've got to start having conversations with our allies about all this stuff. And Turkey's one of them. Turkey's a NATO ally of ours. And we got to start having conversations with them about a number of things, including their role that they need to play in fighting ISIS and al-Nusra and Hezbollah and Hamas. And so this item would be on the agenda with Turkey. But what I'm not going to tell you that I will jam this down their throat in the first 100 days. Fact is that it's very important that the Armenian genocide is recognized and acknowledged. Very important. The question for a president always is priorities. You know, if in fact jamming that down the Turks' throat in the first 100 days means the Turks take a walk on fighting ISIS and al-Nusra and Hezbollah and Hamas and playing a positive role with the Kurds and Syria, then I got to decide which are the most important things. That's the amazing thing about the presidency is, and this is where I think this president has failed so miserably, every action has a reaction. And we understand that, and that's okay. And sometimes you are going to take the action like support that resolution and jam it down their throats. But just as long as you acknowledge what the reaction to that's going to be and that you're okay for your country and for your overall strategic view of the world to be able to deal with that. So it's a priority. The question's going to be, as I order all those priorities, where's it going to land? And some of that will be the reaction of the Turks. Some of it will be the reaction of their neighbors. Some of it will be how we can cobble together the alliance we need to fight those terrorist groups with or without Turkey. So my answer is, I agree with you in principle, but I'm not going to make a commitment to you on order. Because if I do that now, then I put myself in a box, and that's not in a box the President of the United States should be in. Because you have to have an overall larger strategic vision. This president does one-offs, and he doesn't understand that that one-off over here affects something over here, and vice versa. And that's how the world has gotten, in my view, in the awful shape that it's in. America's got to stand up and speak out against that type of conduct. The same way we should be speaking out against the genocide in Syria, the same way we should be speaking out about Iran's statements regarding Israel, which are clearly genocidal in nature as well. So we got a bunch of these things that we got to deal with, and that's one of them. So be assured it's on my list, but I'm not going to tell you exactly where on my list because I want to actually negotiate this when I get there. But thank you for raising it.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. I'm undecided. You're up against two other people, T-Rump and Jeb Bush. Okay? I went on your website. I talked to you before. You told me to go on your website about the veterans and the health care. Excellent. I really like that part of you. The problem I got is I'm tired of people blowing smoke up my butt. Straightforward to you. I'm the type of guy, I started my company, I got employees, I worked my butt off to support my wife, put my 2 kids through college. I'm 55 years old, I'm heading down that lane of retirement. All of a sudden, you want to do minimum wage increase. Not you, not you. They're talking minimum. They're talking about minimum wage increases. As a small business owner, I pay good, but an apprentice makes $14.50 an hour as an electrician. If they raise the rate to $15 an hour, you're going to put a lot of small businesses out of business. Or I'm going to do it this way. If I have 4 people working for me, you're laid off, and you still get the raise. That's how I'm going to do it. How are you going to convince Congress, even though it's going to be coming down that way, how are you going to convince them to help the small people like me instead of saying, yeah, we could do it? A lot of people aren't looking at the small businesses. I'm not a multi-millionaire. Okay, I probably got $500 in my pocket, and that's going somewhere to pay a bill or to buy food. Continue, another question. If and when you do become president, everybody leans towards the First Lady, okay? And I bet she's never had this question asked. Everybody did health care and food and reading. What would her role be in your establishment?
She has no comment. Mary Pat and I are going to be married 30 years a month from now, on March 8th. I'm going to display to you one of the ways that I've actually been able to stay married to someone like her for 30 years. I'm going to answer your first question while I'm giving her time to think about what she's going to say on the second question, all right? On your first question, part of this is you got to look at, I want to kind of combine the two things you said, right? So you talked about you're tired of people blowing smoke at you. And, right, exactly. New Jersey, we say it a little differently, but that's okay. You're tired of people blowing smoke at you, and you want to know about the minimum wage question and small business treatment in general. So the only way for you to really tell for sure is to look at what we've done. So in New Jersey, they passed a minimum wage increase that I thought was too much, and so I vetoed it. I mean, so, you know, the attitude is, like, if you think, and I'm not opposed to a minimum wage increase, and I told them this. They wanted to increase the minimum wage. They needed to do it in small increments over a period of time so that somebody like you could plan for it. Not bang you with a big increase at one moment, and then you're going to do exactly. And I tell them, I just wish the Democrats in my legislature were here to hear you say, well, if you give that kind of increase, then I got 4 employees, I'm going to fire 2 of them, I'm going to want them in the raise. Because I tell them all the time that's business people have to make those decisions. They have to meet payroll, and they're not going to. When you increase the minimum wage, as you know, it's not just the wage, it's the payroll taxes and all the rest that go along with it, with an increased wage. So I've already vetoed that as governor, and so you could be assured that as president, I would not be very sympathetic to some big, one-time increase in the minimum wage. Just wouldn't be, because I think it's bad for exactly the reasons you put. Second thing we're going to do for small business folks like you are what we've done in New Jersey. My first executive order as governor was to freeze any new regulation from any department or agency for 90 days. And then I sent my lieutenant governor out to meet with small business people in public forums all across the state to say, bring with you the list of regulations that the government has put upon you in New Jersey that are expensive, that make no sense, that make your life more difficult. We had enormous meetings all over the state where people came with those lists. And at the end of our first year in office, we got rid of 1/3 of all the regulation that had been put in place by my predecessor. All right? So that helps small business significantly, because that's the hidden tax, as you know. There's the taxes you have to pay, and then there's all the people you have to pay to make sure you're complying with the regulations, and the fees you have to pay to comply with the regulations, and no one counts that as a tax, but it's a tax. It's coming out of your pocket, and you're the owner, you're responsible for it. Now, before I hand this over to the First Lady, how we doing? All right, good. I want to say one other thing about the 2 other guys you're considering. Okay, so now, Jeb Bush has this kind of experience. Yeah, he was a 2-term governor of Florida, and I think he was a good governor in Florida. I think Jeb did a good job in Florida when he was there. The difference between me and Jeb Bush is that Jeb had a Republican legislature the entire time he was governor in a red state. And, I'd give my right arm to have 1 week of a Republican legislature. 1 week. If you gave me 1 week of the Republican legislature, I wouldn't sleep, nor would they. With all the things, they just say, okay, ready, set, go, and we would just do as much as we possibly could. Because I've had a Democratic legislature every minute of every day I've been governor. But what that's forced me to do is 2 things. I've learned how to fight, and I've learned how to compromise. That's much more like what's going to happen in Washington, D.C. Congressman will tell you, even if I keep a Republican Congress and I'm the Republican president, there's going to be compromise that has to be made. He represents the people of the 3rd Congressional District in New Jersey. They have a certain set of principles that they care about. He has a certain set of principles that he's come to Washington, D.C. to fight for and represent. I'm not the only guy in Washington who has got principles. And by the way, the folks on the Democratic side of the aisle, even though we may disagree with them, they got principles too. What I've learned in dealing with the Democratic legislature is you got to shut your mouth and listen. And then find those areas where you can go, okay, this doesn't really violate my governing philosophy. I can give them this, but in return, I need to get that. Jeb doesn't have any experience in doing that. He sent his stuff down the hall. They rubber stamped it, yes. They send it back. He signs it. They have a party. Everybody has a great press conference. Everyone pats each other on the back, and then that's the end of that. That doesn't happen much in New Jersey, There's some stuff going on the back, but it ain't patting. As to my friend, Mr. Trump, listen, he just doesn't have the first idea. Like I heard him today being interviewed, okay? I heard it because I'm on O'Reilly tonight in 40 minutes by the magic of television. I taped it this afternoon, and so did he. So I got to listen to his interview. Here's what you got to listen to, like when you listen to Donald. Whatever he says first, if he's not completely saying something, that you can't believe, he never answers the second question, how? I'm going to build a wall across the entire 4,000-mile border in the south, and the Mexicans are going to pay for it. Okay. How? Like, how are the Mexicans going to pay for it? How are you going to get the Mexicans to pay for it? Now, what got him in trouble in Iowa is we said, I'll put a 45% tariff on them if they don't. Oof. Farmers in Iowa, not very happy about the idea of the Mexicans then putting a 45% tariff on their corn, on their soybeans, and the other things that they export in Iowa. Every action has a reaction, as I mentioned to that guy before. Social Security. He criticized my plan. It's terrible. You shouldn't take anything away from anybody. So then they asked him at one of the debates, well, you disagree? They asked me to put out my plan. I did. You disagree with Governor Christie's plan. What's your plan? He said, everyone is going to get so incredibly, amazingly, marvelously rich when I become president that we're not going to have to worry about Social Security, not for a minute. That's why I'm going to fix it. Right? I'm up on stage. I'm like, okay. I mean, that's fine. Like, all right, if that could actually happen, we'd all be thrilled, right? It's like you all got your own individual winning Powerball ticket. You didn't just get a ticket, you got a guarantee that it was a winner. Hey, me too. All right, let's go. How? Everyone's going to get amazingly, marvelously, wonderfully, incredibly rich, and then we won't have to worry about Social Security. Okay. Like, listen, I've known him for 13 years, and I like him on a personal level. I really do. But it matters to know what you're talking about. It matters. And like, you know, he got asked in the debate about the nuclear triad. Remember that? All right, you know, I'm standing there listening to him, and we're like 45 seconds in, and he's saying, nuclear, it's dangerous, it's awesome, it's very powerful, and it's awesome, and I have great respect for how powerful and awesome it is. I'm like, okay. But like, what about the nuclear triad? Like, you need to know this stuff. Okay, there's some basic blocking and tackling of this business that you must know. It doesn't mean that every businessman isn't qualified to be president of the United States, not at all. But it's like, you gotta do your homework. You gotta know what you're talking about. And so my biggest concern on that front has been, I don't see the answer to the next question. How? Right? And so that's the difference, I think, between me and Donald. We approach some things in somewhat similar ways. We're both pretty direct guys, and we say what's on our mind, and we don't sugarcoat a lot of things. And that part of him I respect and admire a lot, that he's willing to say some things that he really believes in his heart, and he doesn't care whether people are going to be offended or not by it. That's good. But that's burning down the house. Then how do you rebuild it? Because it's got to be rebuilt. And so I understand everybody's anger, but the anger has to be directed towards not having a repeat of the very same things that made you angry in the first place. Except now it's even worse, right? Because you're building on 8 years of inept management and then more. So she's ready now.
Wow. Well, it's a first, except for the town hall I did myself when you had to go back and plow the roads. But thank you, and I have thought about this already. I was not sitting there thinking of it. I really think that we need to shed the light on the really tragic problem of homeless veterans. And, and I think, thanks. And I really think as First Lady, that's definitely something I could do and use the bully pulpit to do it, and also to talk about the terrible mental health situation so many of our returning veterans are finding themselves in addition to drug and alcohol addiction. So if I could do a little bit to help that, I would be really honored. Thanks.
If you want to stay, her town hall meeting is beginning at 8. You just stay right on. She's going to take it from here. I'm going to go get some dinner. Yes, sir, back there.
In 2008, the backbone of the housing market, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, were placed into conservatorship by the government. And today, they're extremely profitable, but they're still in conservatorship, and 100% of their profits are going to reduce the federal government. So my question is, what would you do to recapitalize both of these companies so that we don't face another housing crisis?
It's a really good question. You know, first off, we got to make sure that we change all of the rules that put them in the position they were in to begin with, right? So you know that both from a statutory perspective and a regulatory perspective, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were forced, and the banks were being forced to give home mortgage loans to people that had no business getting them. None. And that's what caused the problem. So you're right that they absolutely need to get back into their normal mode of doing business. And right now, they've become a bit of a cash cow for folks. But before we get into any of that, I'm going to want to revisit Dodd-Frank, and I'm going to want to revisit all of the regulations that go around Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Dodd-Frank in particular, because right now, in my view, it's crushing the local community banks. You know, I don't have any problem with J.P. Morgan Chase and Citibank and Bank of America and Wells Fargo getting leaned on hard. They're the ones who, in the main, well, along with Goldman Sachs and some of the others, created the meltdown that we had through the way they conducted themselves. And they're big banks, and they should have to be required to have big reserves so that the taxpayers don't have to bail them out again like we did in 2008. But our local community banks are getting killed because Congress went at this with a meat cleaver instead of a scalpel. And so they wound up applying all these rules to our local community banks that they apply to Wells Fargo. And these local community banks don't have the capital to be able to comply. They're being reluctant to extend loans to small businesses because they feel like if they do that and the loan goes bad, that they're going to really get whacked by the federal government. And what it's doing is it's hurting our small businesses' ability to be able to capitalize, get capitalized from our banks. And so we need to revisit Dodd-Frank. We need to revisit the rules surrounding Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and then we need to get it back on the right track. But I think it's in that order. We got to make sure that we fix all the problems that surround that, or as many of them as we can, really quickly, because that's affecting our lack of economic growth as well, because of the non-liquidity of those capital markets for small business guys like our guy sitting up here. I mean, they need to be able to have access to capital markets, and the way they're going to get them is not from Wells Fargo or from J.P. Morgan Chase. They're going to get it from the local community bank in their town, where they know the banker, and the banker knows his business and may have used his business and believes in him, so he's willing to take a chance on a loan. And we need to have more of that, because small businesses create the overwhelming majority of jobs in our society. If we want to grow those jobs and also get him to be able to not have the government tell him to raise his people's wages, but let him decide to raise his people's wages because they've earned it and he has the money to do it, that's the way we want to get it done. So that's the way I would approach that problem. It's good, really good question, though. All right. Thank you. All right. He was down to 3, now he's down to 1. I win. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Now, just want to let you know now, I'm giving you the rest of the time off between now and Tuesday. No more town hall meetings. No more town hall meetings. Don't worry. Turn off your TV. Don't go get your mail. None of that stuff. There's no reason. You made up your mind. You're a man of conviction. Stick with your principles. No, that's all right. And by the way, it's because of her too, right? Yeah, thank you. Just when I need another thing for her to hang over my head tonight. It's going to be really great. Yeah, I got you that one, buddy. Carrying you. Absolutely. All right. So, yes, sir.
Good to see you too. Governor, thank you for coming to Sandown this afternoon in the snowstorm. My question to you is, we continue to give millions and millions of dollars to these countries that would like nothing more than all of us in this room to die. When will we stop giving money to the countries to take care of veterans, sleeping under the bridge and so on, keep it in the United States and shut them off?
It's a really simple principle. You have to, if you're the United States, you have to support your friends, and you have to let your enemies know the limits of your patience. Right? So one of the ways of letting those folks know the limits of your patience is to pull back the American money spigot when they're acting in a way which is contrary to American national interest. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You know, we want to persuade people, we want to cajole people, we want to help people to come to our side. I'm all for that, but we can't be played for suckers. And all too often, especially in this administration, we've been played. Iran's playing us right now in a huge way, in a way that is embarrassing to the American people. This country that for 36 years has been very consistent, death to America. Very consistent, burn the American flag. Very consistent, take America hostages. Very consistent. Yet this president somehow believes that he sees something that no one else sees, that he understands something that no one else understands, that somehow Iran's going to change. That's just one example of dozens of examples that you and I, if we sat down over a beer, could, hash out pretty quickly. And so as president, my test is going to be fairly simple. If you're willing to work with us, you're willing to be part of our team, and you need some help, we're going to be happy to help like America's always been. But you're going to be working against our interests, you're going to be working against our team, then enough's enough now. President Bush said this really well, right after 9/11. He said, it's time to choose. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And we're in the same kind of situation now in this country again, 7, 8 years later. We're in the same position. And I would take the same kind of approach. You're either with us or you're with them. No neutrality. Okay? We need to actually get to stopping these folks, because the violence they're creating as a way of trying to impose their religious beliefs on us is completely unacceptable and antithetical to everything that we stand for as a country. So that'll be a very basic tenet and principle, and I think most people will agree with it. And those who don't, that's why they elect me president, to make the decisions, right? So we'll do that. All right, so my staff is telling me I can take one more question, which means I will take two. The reason for this is that I want to prove to them that I'm still the boss. You laugh about this, but it is not laughable. You see, when you run for president, you know what it's like? Here's what it's like to run for president. You are surrounded every day by people who are significantly younger than you, and they tell you where to go and what to do every minute of the day. So the only place that I am free from the tyranny of the young, it's like right here in the center of the circle with this microphone in my hand. So we're going to do 2 more questions for everybody since you came out in the snow. Yes, sir, right there. They're going to bring you a microphone.
Hi, Governor. I'm actually a mayor in Massachusetts, one of the 4 Republican mayors in the entire state. It's but and I hope this is okay. It's a real softball question. So I know you're used to hardball.
Yeah,
probably
it's okay.
steel balls with spikes on them.
Exactly right.
But the endorsement today of Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito. I think that just gives you a tremendous boost. Can you talk a little about that, the importance of it?
Listen, I'm thrilled and so gratified that Governor Baker decided today to endorse us. It's really wonderful. He is and has proven to be, as you know, in his first year as governor, one of the most effective governors in the country. And it's because Charlie Baker makes decisions on behalf of the people who elected him. He does not put politics first. Charlie Baker puts effectiveness first. He puts competence first. And he, from the minute he got into office, when he got dumped on with more snow in the first 4 or 5 weekends of anybody's governorship that I've ever seen in my life, and I was talking to Charlie a lot during those times and just saying to him, keep doing what you're doing. People are seeing you. They understand you're in charge. You're making decisions. You're doing it in a way that's helping them as much as you can under all the circumstances, and that's what people expect from their governor. And he has just continued that from those early snowstorms all the way through the entire first year as governor. And the lieutenant governor has been a great partner for him and has helped him significantly with her travel around the state, her ability to be able to talk to any community in Massachusetts and have them know that she's there for them, not just for the Republicans, but for the Republicans, the Independents, and the Democrats. And so they're a great team. And Charlie and I got to know each other well first in 2010. When he was running for governor the first time, I came up and did a number of events, as you might remember, for Charlie, not only helping him to raise money, but also doing campaign rally events. And one of the great rallies I've been to in my 6 years of campaigning for other people was on the Sunday morning before the election in Massachusetts. We went to an old town hall in, and I can't remember where it was, but it was an old town hall in Massachusetts where we had this huge rally. 700, 800 people were there on a Sunday morning. And, Charlie was like asking me beforehand, so what are you going to say? And I said, Charlie, I don't decide what I'm going to say until I get out there. I don't have any idea, but we'll come up with something, don't worry. So I go out and I said, you folks probably don't think you have a whole lot in common with a guy from New Jersey. I said, but I want to let you all know something. I'm a New York Mets fan. said, now, let's put aside 1986 for a second. Everybody remain calm, okay? I said, here's the one thing we know that we have in common. There is only one evil empire. Only one, and it resides in the Bronx, right? And so, what's that? What? Oh, great. You know, she shows me up everywhere. By the way, the town we went to was Melrose. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. She's all over it. Man, it's incredible. The homeless vets are going to be homed. I can tell you that. She's the first lady, that's for sure. So I'm thrilled that Charlie has made the decision to support me. And I want to also tell all of you, it's a really courageous thing for him to do. You know, so many other people in this race, whether they're members of Congress, whether they're you know, governors, lieutenant governors, other folks around the country, have refused to support anybody. You know, the easiest thing in the world to do is sit on the sidelines. Sit on the sidelines till there's like only one candidate left, and then go, okay, I'll be with him. You know, that's the easy thing to do. This shows you what kind of leader Charlie Baker is. He's looked at the candidates in this field, and he's decided who he thinks will be the best president of the United States. And not only is he willing to make that decision, but he's willing to say it out loud. I can't tell you how many people have called me and said, I think you're the best, I really do. And after you win a few things and it looks like for sure you're gonna be the nominee, I'll be happy to be with you. I'm like, I don't need you then, you know? I need you now, you know? And Charlie Baker is one of those guys who, when he called me and said to me, listen, I've made up my mind, I'm with you. When do you want to do this? And that's a great call to get from somebody, and especially from somebody who, by the way, also is the singularly most popular governor in America right now, with a job approval rating of over 70% as a Republican in Democrat Massachusetts. So yeah, I'm really happy to have him. May even be seeing Charlie sometime soon up here. Who knows? He might wander over. Now, someone's pointing to someone. Well, you're pointing at each other. Oh, no, you're pointing. Now you're pointing. No. Okay, so here you go. This is what happens to me, right? She's pointing to him. She's pointing to him. Right, so you guys know him. You know him. So what do? It's such a quandary. I haven't taken any the younger people, no offense, younger people tonight, so I'm going to take him.
Thank you, Governor. You're right, I am a first-time voter, and I've been looking at some of the candidates, and a big issue for me is student loan reform, because I'm going to be going to college this fall, and one of the schools I'm actually applying to is Princeton. You know, that's from your home state.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I was wondering, based on what I've heard from some of the Democrats, do you have different plans for student loan reform? Like Bernie Sanders, he's talking about having public schools being tuition-free.
Right.
I was wondering if I could have your take on that.
Sure, I'll give you my plan. And first of all, I'll tell you on Bernie's plan, nothing's free, baby. All right? Here's what's going to happen. Okay, you want to see Bernie's tuition-free college plan? Bill, come over here. This is my campaign lawyer, who is the only person I would trust to actually do this. This is the Bernie Sanders free tuition plan. Leave Congressman Meehan alone. He can't save you now. All right, I want you to go into my pocket, this pocket. Yeah, and take out what's in there. All right, no, just the paper.
Oh, just the paper.
Okay. All right. Now give that to him. Okay.
With the Mets.
Yeah, with the Mets thing, with the Mets money club, sure. Okay. So see, this is Bernie Sanders' free tuition plan for you. He's Bernie. He came into my pocket and took all my money, and he gave it to you. Thank you, Bill. Here's the bigger problem, okay? We're going to go to stage 2. I'm going to give you the money back. Be careful now, okay? All right, I'm going to give you the money back. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to Princeton. You're going to be wildly successful. You're going to start your own business, or you're going to be an engineer, or you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor or something, and then you're going to have that, but a lot more than what's right there, I can guarantee you, right? And then you know what's going to happen? Bernie's going to come to you and go, hey, I got to give her this for free. Nothing's for free, man. They're taking my money now, they're going to take your money later, and that's the way it's going to work. Now, here's my plan. My plan is first, like, you got to earn it. Because anything in life that's worth anything, you got to earn, all right? So, but I don't want you to be overburdened by it, and I don't want your dreams and your aspirations for your life to be restricted. See, I didn't call on him, and now he's leaving. And that's it. There's always a penalty. So here's what I need to do. First thing is on student loans. You should be able to refinance your student loans, and right now you can't. And it's obscene that the American government is making money off our students. If you can take a loan from the federal government and then you can go to a private bank a year or 2 or 3 or 4 later and you can refinance it for a lower rate, you should be able to. We get our money back, what do we care? We shouldn't be looking to make money off of you. So you should be able to refinance your loans. That'll lower your carrying costs and be able to help you be a little more affordable. Second, I want to give you a national service option. I want you, after you leave Princeton, let's say you have a lot of debt, I want you to be able to spend a year or 2 or 3 or 4, however many you want, in national service. Not necessarily the military, although you could, but non-military national service options as well. And every year you serve, we're going to knock off a portion of your debt. So the longer you serve, the more of your debt gets knocked off, and that's up to you. But it gives you a little bit of breathing room and a little bit of a break, and it makes our country a better place because you're going to be a huge help in no matter what national service field you choose to do some things that need to be done in this country that aren't being done right now. And I think that'll help. And what it'll also help to do is you then will get to choose when you end your national service what you want your career to be based on what's in your heart, not based upon how much of a check you need to make to be able to pay your student loans. And I find that most people, when they get to follow what's in their heart, what they really are passionate about, they're better at it, and our country benefits more from it as well. But that's not all that we need to do. We need to work on the cost side as well. Now, here's the good news for you. I am a member of the Board of Trustees at Princeton University. So we can chat later if you want. But as governor of New Jersey, you know, Princeton was originally, the name of Princeton was the College of New Jersey. And back to its beginning, in the College of New Jersey, they put the governor, the sitting governor, on the Board of Trustees. And that has remained all the way through to its changing its name to Princeton, being a private institution. But I've seen what goes on in colleges and universities, not only as now a member of the board at Princeton, but also as a father. Right? We have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, 22, 19, 15, and 12. So that means 2 of them are in college right now. Our oldest son, Andrew, is a senior at Princeton and plays on the baseball team there. Andrew is having a great time, second semester senior year, except for writing his senior thesis, which he has to get done or he won't graduate. And when I ask him about it, he goes, "It's practically writing itself." I said, that scares me, but okay. Because I think it's not practically writing itself, it may just be writing itself, which is what really worries me. And our daughter Sarah is at Notre Dame, and she's a sophomore. So the total tuition bill for our family this year is $122,500. Yeah. So, and we got this letter this summer from the president of the University of Notre Dame, Father John Jenkins, great guy. The first paragraph of the letter, this is not exact, but this is the essence of it. It said, "Dear parents, we want to thank you for the blessing that you've bestowed upon us by entrusting the souls of your children to our care for their education over the next number of years." Now, like when you get done reading that paragraph, you close your eyes, you can hear the theme from Rudy in the background, right? You close your eyes, you can see the Golden Dome and Touchdown Jesus. Your heart is pounding. Now, how many Catholics in the room? Raise your hand, Catholics. Okay, if that's the first paragraph, what's the second paragraph? The money paragraph, right? And this is a priest, right? So they know how to separate you from your money better than anyone in the world. They get trained in it. So the next paragraph says, That's why we're so pleased to inform you that tuition this year will increase only 3.9%. 3.9% in a 1% inflation world. 3.9%. And then here's the kicker. They say, which is the smallest annual tuition increase at Notre Dame in 40 years. 40. All right. So if we made these decisions like we normally make these decisions in life, the way Mary Pat and I make decisions about the way to spend our money, we would probably look at that and we might conclude, I don't know that we would, but we might conclude, listen, at $62,500 a year, which is the Notre Dame cost right now, we might not think that's a value anymore. We might think, you know what, there are a couple other places we could send her that are less expensive, that would still educate her really well, and so we're going to call Sarah downstairs, and this is the summer now when we got this letter. We're going to call her downstairs, we're going to tell her, you know what, we know you love Notre Dame, you had a great freshman year and all the rest, but we don't think that Notre Dame is a value any longer, and so we're going to send you someplace else. Now, anyone in this room who currently has or has had a 19-year-old daughter, I want you to imagine with me exactly how that conversation would go. In our house, I suspect it would go something like this. After the crying and the stamping of the feet, running upstairs, slamming the door, and at some point during that entire show, the words, "You're ruining my life and I hate you," right, would be in there. After that happened, she and I would probably sit down at the table and go, okay, we got to figure out how to send her back. Here's the problem. Notre Dame knows that too. Princeton knows that. Boston College knows that. Georgetown knows that. Villanova knows that. They all know it. They all know that not only do you become invested in where you decide to go, we become invested in where you decide to go, because all we want is for you to get a great education and to be happy. If we get those phone calls back from college, man, every time I hear from my daughter and the phone rings and I pick it up and she's happy on the other end of the phone, and I'm not getting some notice that she's failing a class, like that's it, my day's made. Like, good, all right, she's doing okay in school and she's happy. She's not crying and saying she's homesick, she wants to come home, she hates school, she hates her friends, she hates her roommate, none of that stuff. We don't have to worry about that. They know that, so they play on us, all of them. So we need to put some market forces on these prices because we can't do it ourselves. So this is what we need to do. First, they need to detail for us every way they spend that money. These are like the most opaque bills in the world, right? Like if you went out for dinner tonight in town here after you leave here, and you and your dad went out, and the check comes, and it says food, $45. I guarantee your father will call the waiter over and go, hey, dude, come here for a second, would you? Would you detail out here exactly what each of us had and how much it costs so I know what it is before I pay it? I just paid the bill for Princeton like 2 weeks ago, and it was 3 lines. Tuition, room and board, other fees. $29,750. So I didn't even ask a question. Where do I send the check? The $45 dinner check, I would have done the same thing your father would do. I go like, hey man, get over here. I want to know what this is. Why aren't we asking? Because I bet you if we knew, we'd be outraged and they'd be embarrassed. Because there is waste on these college campuses all over the place. Now I said this yesterday at New England College with the president of New England College sitting right in front of me. The good thing for me is she was sitting next to Mary Pat. So she was not very happy and was telling me that I had it all wrong. But here's the interesting thing she said. She said that the cost at New England College is like $48,000 a year. But she said the real cost is $96,000 a year, so look how good we're doing for the kids. I'm like, I had to leave because I was going to see Springsteen. I wasn't going to be late. But I'm from New Jersey. It's like against the law in New Jersey to be late for a Springsteen concert. But like I felt like saying to her, you're missing the whole point. It's not what you charge them, it's what you're spending, and you're making me feel worse. If you're telling me, we're only charging 48, but it actually costs us 96. Like, damn, man, why does it cost you $96,000 a year to educate my kid? Makes no sense. So we need to have them detail this for us. You need to see what they're spending the money on. We got to see the 44 vice presidents for paperwork. We got to see the monuments, the egos that are being built around those campuses. We need to see all that stuff so we can start to put the heat on them about it. Right now, we're walking blind. We're operating blind. We don't know how to criticize them. We need to have that information. Second, you should be able to unbundle your bill. Meaning, you're going to go to Princeton, they give you a whole list of things you can pay for. You check the ones you want to use, and you only get to use those. Don't get to use the other ones if you don't pay for them. But if you don't pay for them, that's a market test, right? So if 90% of the people say they're not going to pay for a certain thing, then they're not going to have the money to do it. They won't have the money to do it unless they want to spend money out of their endowment or someplace else to provide that doesn't affect your tuition, your cost. You know, we should start, that's a market force on this, people choosing what they're willing to pay for. If that's for me, I'm busy. Here's the thing. There's crazy stuff going on out there, right? I don't know. I never asked Andrew about this at Princeton. But I asked Sarah, I was talking about rock climbing walls one day. And Sarah told me, yeah, there's rock climbing walls at Notre Dame, a couple of them. I said, all right, well, Indiana, it's flat. You know, rock climbing walls. I went to Iowa State University. I asked them, you got rock climbing walls? They said, oh yeah, we got rock climbing walls here at Iowa State. Like, okay, again, like it's flat land, Iowa, not a lot of rocks. Then I came to the University of New Hampshire. And I asked them at the University of New Hampshire, you got rock climbing walls? They said, yeah. I go, you got rocks. Like you have rocks everywhere. You're the Granite State. You're named after a rock. Go outside and climb those rocks. Stop spending money building artificial rocks inside, right? Like, there's like a rock climbing wall epidemic in campuses across America. Take my word for it. I've seen it, right? And it's crazy. And when I said this, the press got all over me. There was one story, headline of the story, I swear to you, was Christie's assault on college fitness. Now look at me, everybody. I've assaulted fitness in many ways in my life. This is not one of them, all right? It just isn't. So we need to let you unbundle your bill. Now, in following the rule that I set for my newest, most favorite supporter over here, you got to ask me how. How are you going to do that? Here's how we're going to do it. If they don't do those two things, their students cannot participate in the federal student loan program or the federal student grant program. Oh, that'll be good, right? That way, believe me, they'll comply because there's too much money in those programs for them to walk away from. And then we get some market forces on your prices so that you won't, or your family won't have to go into significant debt that will change your life for a decade or more once you get out. So that's the way I would handle it for you. I wish you the best of luck applying wherever you're going to, and wherever you wind up going. And if you wind up in New Jersey, pretty cool. You know the governor. You come by. The governor's mansion is literally 1/2 mile off the Princeton campus. You can't miss it. It's right there on the main drag. You walk by. It's the big gates, the big White House with the columns and everything. Just like ring the buzzer, right? and say, listen, the governor and I are friends. I asked him a question on student debt at a town hall meeting. And I'd like to come and hang or do my laundry. Whichever you want, just come on and hang. You can do that. We'll be happy to host you. All right. All right. I have promised myself that I will let you poor people go by 8 o'clock on a Friday night. So we're not going to go over 8 o'clock. Now, of course, this is not a Rubio town hall. If it was, you would have already been finished with dinner. After that, because it's 45 minutes. So we go a little bit longer, but we actually answer your questions, which is a nice option. Two things I want to say to you before we go. First one is this. I want to thank you. On a snowy night, you've come out here tonight to listen to me, some of you supporters, some of you undecided, to really try to get to making a decision by Monday. I told people today that the week between the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary is the longest week in American politics, right? Because everybody is so intense and so focused that every 24-hour period is like 48 hours. It's like dog years, for gosh sakes, you know? So like, don't be dissuaded by what's happened in the first 48 hours, 72 hours after Iowa, right? That, oh, well, they took some polls right afterwards and some people went up and some people went down. Of course that's gonna happen. Then people are going to go, okay, now what am I going to do to decide who am I actually going to vote for? That's the process you're in now. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday is 3 days since Iowa passed. Now everybody takes a deep breath and says, okay, I know what happened in Iowa. We're not Iowa. We're in New Hampshire, and we're going to make up our own mind. Don't be judged by any of the stuff that you've heard. Be judged by, what we've all done together. What are the town hall meetings we've done together? What have you heard from your candidates? What's the research you've done on your own? New Hampshire voters are amongst the most serious voters in America. Show everybody that. Show everybody that. And I thank you for showing me that by showing up tonight. I really appreciate it. Second thing I wanted to say to you is to kind of finish where I started, but by telling you a story from when we were in Iowa. Mary Pat and I were in Iowa. This is now 5 or 6 days ago. We were in Burlington, Iowa, doing a town hall meeting. And about midway through the town hall meeting, a gentleman raised his hand, and I called on him. He stood up and he said to me, Governor, I want to know your philosophy as Commander-in-Chief. He said, I want to let you know that this is particularly personal to me because in 4 months we're sending our oldest son to Iraq. And he then sat down. Now, I was only focused on him. I was looking in his eyes when he was asking me this question. When he sat down, I looked, and to his left was sitting his wife, who was crying. And then he started to well up. And at that moment, I stopped being a candidate for president, and I reverted back to being a father. Like I said, we have 4 of our own, and 2 of whom could serve, or of the age who could serve. And I thought to myself, what an enormous sacrifice that these parents are making. Not only their son, but these parents. The most precious thing in their life, the most precious thing in their life, their firstborn child, who they nurtured in the womb and through infancy, and then childhood and young adulthood. And now he's an adult. And they're turning him over to our country to go around the world and fight for our principles. And I thought to myself, what an amazingly selfless thing for these parents, and how awfully worried and scared they looked about the fate of their son. And they wanted to know, who's their commander-in-chief going to be? Who's going to be the person who's going to set out their mission? Who's going to be the person who's going to do everything in their power to bring their son back home to them whole? And then there were 3 veterans, at least 3, but 3 that I could identify in the audience that night. I could identify them because they had on baseball caps that indicated the war they had served in. There was an older gentleman in a wheelchair who had on a hat that said World War II veteran. Then there was another gentleman who later identified himself to me as being 82 years old. He had a Korean War veteran hat. Then there was another younger guy who had on a hat that said Operation Iraqi Freedom Veteran. And as I looked at them, I thought to myself, think about who the men were who sent those men into battle. For our World War II veteran, it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Harry Truman. For our Korean veteran, it was Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower. And for our Iraqi freedom veteran, it was George W. Bush. Put aside for a moment, if you will, your political feelings or leanings about any of those men. I think we could all agree that they were serious, sober, mature, prepared men who took their job as commander-in-chief extraordinarily seriously and understood the responsibility, not only to those men and women they sent into battle, but to their families that were waiting at home and praying every night for them to come home safely. So I want to suggest something to all of you with respect when you go into the voting booth on Tuesday. I want you to imagine that that mother and father are standing on either side of you when you mark that ballot, that they'll actually be able to look and see who you're voting for, that you'd have to actually look at them and say, I believe this person is the very best person to be your son's commander-in-chief, to ensure his safety and security as best he can, and to give you the best chance to return him home whole. I have to say that I think there are some of the names that you're going to see on that ballot which you could not look those folks in the eye and say that to them with a straight face. Then don't do it. Whatever might motivate you to do that, reverse it. Because that's what this election is about, everybody. We talked about a lot of important issues tonight, but man, there's no more important issue than who is the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military the world has ever known, who is the person who's going to make these decisions about the lives and the safety of the men and women we put into combat, who is going to decide how to protect American national and homeland security and make that their first priority every single day they're president. Nothing more important. Because if we don't get that right, nothing else gets right. And more than that, that's what that mother and father are owed from us as Americans. And so this whole approach to the election changed for me when I saw that couple. I don't know their names. I said goodbye to them at the end, and I wished them good luck, and I told them that I'd be praying for them and for their son. But the fact is that we got to do more than pray. We got to act responsibly as a people and put somebody in charge that will let those parents at least sleep at night knowing that the very best person is in charge of their son. I didn't run for president 4 years ago because I was not ready for that responsibility. I had been governor for 18 months, and I saw the political opportunity. Believe me, I saw the political opportunity. It was a much different field 4 years ago than it is today, much weaker in many ways. And there were a lot of people who wanted me to run. But I made the decision that I was not going to run for president because in my heart I knew I wasn't ready. And I think the only thing worse than running for president and losing is running for president and winning when you're not ready. We've watched that for the last 7 years by a man who saw a political opportunity, and he was right. He took it. But then he got to the Oval Office and he didn't know what he was doing. He was the dog that caught the garbage truck and then didn't know what to do with it. I'm ready now to be your president. I've been tested. I've been tested by what I lovingly call an unruly state to govern. I've been tested by the second worst natural disaster in American history. I've been tested by the toughest media market for a Republican in the world. I've been tested in every way that you can be tested politically. And I'm ready. And you got to decide whether you're going to vote for somebody who's ready or for somebody who's taking the political opportunity that they see. Those parents deserve much better. And I'm asking for your vote tonight. And I wouldn't ask for it 4 years ago because it would have been wrong for me to do it. I waited until I was ready. And I'm ready now. And our country needs a president who's going to be ready from day one without any on-the-job training. New Hampshire has the opportunity to make that difference on Tuesday. And I really hope you do. Thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate it.